Paul Bledsoe is a lecturer on public policy and climate change at the Center for Environmental Policies at American University, right here in Washington. He's at those talks in Bonn. I asked him if there was a growing sense of urgency surrounding this issue.
I think world leaders are increasingly alarmed at the incredible climate change impacts that are happening all around the world. Most recently in the United States with 3 major hurricanes producing record floods, hundreds of billions of dollars in damages. Half of Puerto Ricans still don't have power after 2 months. This is a peek at what global warming is going to increasingly wreak on populations around the world, and global leaders are rightfully worried about it. You know, there was just a report that came out Monday that found that global emissions are rising again after being flat for about 3 years, including Chinese emissions, which have grown 3.5% in 2017. So if emissions continue to increase that factor, we're in big trouble.
You say big trouble. It's interesting what a difference a year makes. Last year, of course, with Obama and President Xi, they were kind of driving this conversation with the Paris Agreement. Now we're seeing the Trump administration actually promoting coal at this gathering. That led California Governor Jerry Brown to say, quote, "I think the federal government is treading water. They've kind of become like Saturday Night Live or a comedy program. They're bringing in a coal company to teach the Europeans how to clean up the environment." So what's the sentiment like there? You're an American, you're there. How do people feel about the United States and the leadership on this, and specifically the Trump administration?
Trump is entirely isolated here. There's not a single other country who has said that they will leave the Paris Agreement as Trump has pledged to do. Actually, technically, he can't leave for 3 years, right about the time of his reelection, should that happen. I hope it doesn't. But so the U.S. is at the negotiating table, but they're being largely ignored. Regarding them having an event on coal, you know, it's kind of like coming to a lung cancer institute and talking about the virtues of smoking. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think it was calculated cynically at his domestic right-wing political audience to claim that they'd, you know, gone to the climate convention and talked about coal. But it really, I think, shows the cynicism at the heart of this administration.
China's moving forward with a national carbon market. Talk to us about those moves and those types of conversations. What are you hearing there on that?
The fact that China is moving ahead in its creating a carbon market and pricing CO2 emissions is very good news. There's an irony, of course. The United States invented carbon pricing, which we use on sulfur dioxide emissions to prevent acid rain. So we in the U.S. have been doing it for sulfur dioxide for 30 years, but for some reason our politics keep getting in our way of doing it for CO2. So the fact that China is doing this is very important, because globally we are going to need both a price on carbon and incentives for the expansion of renewable and low emissions energy of all types. You know, in the wake of the abdication of responsibility by the Trump administration, it's really China and other major countries that the world is looking to make the investments and the innovations we have to do, along with the private sector. So Chinese role cannot be overstated. Their own emissions have grown by 3.5% this year, so they have a lot of work to do.
Again, that was Paul Bledsoe, president of Bledsoe Associates, talking to us about the climate change talks